Welcome everybody to Africa for Dummies, where we keep all things Africa. Welcome to today's episode, which is going to be a deep dive into one of the biggest global events ever hosted on African soil, outside of the 2010 FIFA World Cup, I believe. The 2025 G20 Summit in Johannesburg. We're going to explore what the G20 actually is, why the US didn't fully show up, the impact on South Africa, and the US elections, the GBV protests that reshaped the national conversation, and whether the G20 still matters for Africans today. It's a story of politics, people, and the shifting shape of global power. Welcome to Africa for Dummies. As mentioned, we're going to be discussing the G20 Summit, and as always, we are joined by the Africa for Dummies favorite, Mr. Zenge. How are you doing, man? A lot of comments about how smart you are, how brilliant you are. I read every single comment.
My head's big enough.
No, wait, that laugh isn't about your head, but yeah.
Anyway, I'm really happy to be here. So
yeah, thank you very much. And before we jump right into this video, be sure to like, share, subscribe. Please comment what your thoughts are. That really helps our video get pushed out, and it really supports our channel because we do quite a lot of work in the background, and it really gives us a little bit of motivation. So today's video is about the G20. Zenge, could you give us a quick breakdown on what exactly is this G20, and why is it?
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, the G20 basically was started in 1999 after the 1997 to 1998 Asian financial crisis. The G7, you might know of the G7 as well, which was started in 1975, which is the group of the seven most sort of industrialized big countries. Russia was in it in the 2000s, then it came out again. But the G20 basically is a group of 20 of the biggest or most important strategic economies in the world. And it started in 1999. It became critical not only because of the Asian financial crisis, but even became more relevant in the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. And it's basically actually got like 19 members plus the European Union, and now plus the African Union, which joined in 2023. So these are the members, right? Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the USA, the United States of America. It represents basically 85% of the global GDP. And 75% of global trade, as well as 65% of the 8 billion people on this world. Basically, it's it's primarily an economic forum, but it also, obviously, as you know, the interlinkages between economy and all of these other things, from climate change, energy, trade, peace and security, health and development. The decisions that the G20 makes, the declarations, are not necessarily binding. So they are incumbent on countries to follow suit and implement if they feel like it, if they have a political will for it, in other platforms like the UN or UN Security Council. So in a nutshell, that's what the G20 is.
Okay, so that was a great summary. And now this meeting of the 20, what can you call them, industrialized or emerging economies in the world that represent 85% of the world's GDP, which is a lot, are now having this meeting in South Africa, right? Yeah. And I believe this is the first time the G20 is occurring on African soil, if I'm not mistaken, is it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so of course the biggest story I think from the G20 is that there's someone missing. There is a very larger than life figure missing from this G20 meeting. Yeah. So Donald Trump doesn't show up to the meeting. Yeah. What does this? What could this mean?
Yeah, so Donald Trump has had a very bumpy history since he came into office this year. I say history, but it's
Mhm.
actually just been 1 year.
I
Um,
know, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it honestly feels like we have gone through 5 years. But
Yeah.
so Donald Trump is part of those people that believe in the conspiracy of the white genocide.
Mhm.
Basically, a conspiracy that white people in South Africa, primarily white farmers in South Africa, are being killed by predominantly black people in some kind of racial war to carry out reverse racism. Um, as though racism has a forward momentum. But so basically, that became an issue after South Africa pushed in a new land law, which was about redistributing land that is unowned. We did an episode on it. So if you want to know about that law
Yeah.
specifically, we did an episode on it earlier. So I won't go into the details of the land law.
Yep.
Although the land law was still very constitutional. And they went over and over again explaining how constitutional it was, but that didn't really help. So when they met I think they met in May, right? Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa met in May. There was the
Right.
probably
The famous
Zelensky
one.
Trump meeting. Yeah, probably after the Zelensky Trump meeting where Trump was talking about Zelensky not having any cards. Ramaphosa, it was a bit of a disaster. Showing the video of
Yeah.
which was proven to be fake, by the way,
Which was a
of
fake
what.
video.
Yeah, of supposedly burial sites for white people, white farmers. The truth actually is that there's more black farmers who are dying in South Africa than they actually are
Mhm.
white farmers. And I think that one of the institutes for race relations in South Africa actually said the majority of South Africans' biggest issue is crime rather than race.
Yeah.
So I think they have
Crime, which yeah.
incredibly racialized rhetoric that people are propelling, people,
Mhm.
including AfriForum, which is originally supposed to be a group that protects heritage of Afrikaner South Africans, which there's nothing wrong. But then they go
Yeah.
to an extent of trying to create alliances to sort of demonize and over exaggerate the situation in South Africa, and actually
Yeah.
encourage things like the refugee policy, which welcomes only white Afrikaner refugees.
Which,
Which is
keep in
quite
mind,
strange because
Afrikaans is a diverse group of people. They're not only white, but somehow only
yeah,
white people
yeah,
are being invited. And actually,
majority,
just
yeah.
to add to, if I may add to some of what you're talking about, I believe I read a report that because of the racial rhetoric that was coming about, the South African Police Department actually was forced to release statistics that were divided on race, because like they never
Uh-huh.
actually do that, but because people were actually complaining about the situation with regards to like white farmers, they actually released statistics to show that I think of all the crimes that were committed, I think in the last quarter, I can't remember which quarter it was, like I think only one white farmer was actually attacked. I should look into the numbers again.
Yeah, so it's purely a conspiracy theory based on
Mhm.
highly manipulated facts that there is some kind of attack on the white population in South Africa, which is very unfortunate, and that's caused the serious issues within South Africa, but also South Africa's pursuance of an agenda that calls the conflict, or is trying to label the conflict in Israel and Gaza, in which
Mhm.
is asymmetrically disadvantaging Gaza. I mean, this is a very much a conflict where over 70. I think the figure is around 70,000 now. It can
Okay.
be put a correct figure there. 70,000 people that have died in Gaza, primarily Palestinians who have died in that war, which was caused by the October 7 attack in 2023, where about more than 1,000 Israeli died. But wait, what I'm trying to say is South Africa has pursued a genocide agenda against Israel because South Africa believes that a genocide is being perpetrated.
They
And
took Israel to the ICC, actually. Was it ICJ?
to the
ICC?
ICJ, yeah,
ICJ. Yeah.
yeah, ICJ, International Court of Justice. And they have the ICJ has talked about signs of genocide, but I haven't got anything that clearly has declared it a genocide. But they have had several sort of rulings, and then the ICC has also given a criminal indictment of Benjamin Netanyahu. So it has got a few successes, like the whole coordination of trying to finally hold Israel accountable. So that's one thing. But so there's two things essentially. There's the Afrikaner issue, and then there's the Israeli issue. In fact, Naledi Pandor has also had a visa stripped off, a few days ago. Naledi Pandor was the former foreign minister of South Africa. South Africa's
of international relations.
In South Africa, they call it the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. It's DIRCO. The department is Department of International Relations and Cooperation.
To add to that, actually, a little bit of like I don't know if it's a like reverse move or like they did this back to the US, but I think this is actually protocol. But Ramaphosa actually refused to hand over the presidency for the G20 to a low-level US diplomat who was... Sorry, go ahead. I think you want to jump in.
So what you're missing here is that the US initially said we are boycotting. Trump put it on social media, says no official from the United States is going. Yeah. Not even Marco Rubio. No one. And I think even the ministerial summit, there was a ministerial summit a few months ago for the G20 ministers of finance. Is it of finance? Finance or foreign affairs? You can correct that. I think it was finance, ministers of finance. They also said they will not be participating. But then, so the G20 started happening, right? Yeah. Narendra Modi arrived, Prime Minister of India. Keir Starmer started arriving. Li Qiang, the Premier of China, who was recently on a trip to Zambia. We did an episode on that one as well. Was flying into South Africa. All sorts of other representatives from all over the G20 and others started coming in. And then the US all of a sudden said, oh, by the way, we would like to participate. Or at least that's what was reported from the South African side. They would like to participate. And then Caroline Leavitt, who is the spokesperson at the White House, she used quite undiplomatic terms to describe what Cyril Ramaphosa said about America, indicating that it might want to participate. She basically said the president is running his mouth, right? Running his mouth. And this is how you talk about, not just the former head of state, not just a foreign head of state, but one of the most strategic presidents in Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the president of the G20, right? So I don't know. It doesn't sound like they really give much credence to South Africa at all. It's very clear that they hate them. And then,
and then such a strong word.
And then the South African spokesperson for the presidency and the minister in the presidency, as well as, and this was retweeted by the foreign affairs spokesperson, the DIRCO department spokesperson, basically saying that South Africa will not hand over to a charge d'affaires. So they're trying to, I think initially what really is the case is probably America was trying to say our ambassador, who basically is kind of in a vacant or transitional period. So when you have a charge d'affaires, an actual ambassador is like approved, is the official representative of the president. Charge d'affaires is like interim. You're kind of filling the gap, right? So that's the most senior diplomat in South Africa representing the United States, the charge d'affaires. Once you have an ambassador, he would be called an ambassador. Yeah. But so they wanted to send that guy, right? Interim, and basically an interim ambassador to go to Cyril Ramaphosa and be like, oh yeah, thanks for the G20 thing. The whole head of state and head of government of the Republic of South Africa, presidents of the G20, getting handling the gavel or whatever it is to a charge d'affaires who's, just based in Pretoria. The asymmetry in that type of level of hierarchy is very disrespectful if you are from the South African side. So they basically said, yeah, we're not going to do that. We either you bring someone that is formidable, and then they even said we will send back someone who is on the same level. So if Trump cannot come to South Africa, right, or if it will send someone who is on equal level and equal footing, because it's a bit humiliating to have the whole president hand over the G20 presidency to someone who is,
Yeah.
not even a high-ranking ambassador, if that's the case, and not even a confirmed ambassador. So, yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
But also, America has also rejected the declaration that was made by the G20 at the meeting. And it will also, in as much as people like to hate the United States, it's still the largest economy in the G20, right? It's got an economy of 28.7 trillion. So it's still a major player in the G20 if it wants to be a player, right? So it's kind of like sort of fighting for South Africa. They look at it as like missing an opportunity to actually influence the G20. It's one of those things about it's better you bring your argument inside the tent rather than try and argue outside, because now you're just not going to be included. And it's also from one angle, people are narrating it as, okay, the world can actually do without the US. The world can actually make a declaration.
Yes, yeah. I've seen without the United States.
And it's like a watershed moment, like, oh, wow, it's not the same way as it used to be 20 years ago. But at the same time, when it comes to the momentum and the resources and the capital for this, the United States is still the biggest and most capable partner to deliver on the G20. So, in as much as the US's role is receding in terms of its share of the global economy, in terms of the attempts at competitive global forums, mind you, it's not just the G20. There's BRICS, there's the Shanghai Cooperation in Asia. All of them are sort of slicing away this unipolar. When I say unipolar, I mean one power, Pax Americana, where if America says no, it doesn't happen. If America wants to bomb something, it's going to happen. And you can't do anything about it. Just suck it up, right? So there's terms that they use, like multipolar, the shift from unipolar to multipolar. But then in that space, where does multilateralism basically is international forums, intergovernmental or international forums, the faith in them and the faith in coming to, in many countries coming together and making a decision for the betterment of the world. Where is that, right? And that's something the head of the EU, the guy representing the head of the EU, the president of Portugal, because the EU also has a presidential head and also has a technical head. Ursula von der Leyen is the head of the Commission, and then the head of the sort of council is the president of Portugal. His surname is Costa, I think. Yeah, he was basically saying we need more multilateralism and less multipolarity, right? Because I think multipolarity is a good thing, but at the same time, it's what you make out. Multipolarity. The multipolar nature of the world should result in people wanting to believe in multilateralism, because multipolar systems have multiple powers, and when you have multiple powers, they all have different views, and they all sort of try and check and balance each other in crude ways. So when you have a unipolar type of system, things like Iraq, the war in Iraq can happen. Right? Where if America says, guys, we're going for a war against terror in Afghanistan, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, cool.
No one's going to say anything.
And then, okay, now we're going to take out Iraq as well. Like, okay, why?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But this is primarily an economic union. No, not union. Let me not say union. That's way too optimistic. Economic forum. Historically, Historically, the purpose of the G20 has been to promote financial stability and sustainable economic growth for the world, right? Because G20 is supposed to pick up on all the major economies across the world. Indonesia,
sort of like a different form of the Bretton Woods conference, sort of like a continuation of that sort of. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
No, not necessarily. I'd say the Bretton Woods was actually more like it's not meant to be a rival of Bretton Woods institutes like the
World Bank.
So the G20 is not meant to rival the Bretton Woods institutes like the World Bank and the IMF. They're actually working. They are invited. The heads of the IMF, Christina Georgieva and the World Bank are actually invited to these things because it's financial. The idea is that they're supposed to attenuate and temper them, right? I had a very interesting argument with a friend of mine about whether or not things like BRICS and China are trying to give another alternative. I think many of them are just trying to temper what's already existing in the world order, because the same world order that the US created, the US doesn't trust that world order anymore. Like the G20,
yeah, they're undermining
it wasn't
one
there.
would actually say.
The G20 wasn't there. The
And that's, I
Conference
think,
of Parties,
something,
the
if I may,
COP13 wasn't there
sorry,
either.
go ahead.
Yeah. So COP13 wasn't there either. G20, it wasn't there. Things like the World Trade Organization have, been heavily criticized. So many of the institutes that it built themselves are being criticized. The United Nations was a fantastic idea. One of the main thinkers of the United Nations was Eleanor Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the greatest American presidents. Because the idea, the sense is that these organizations are being used against the United States rather than for them. And I think from some policy circles, that was the wish that we can use it for the United States rather than for the rest of the world. Although I don't believe that was the intention, even by US actors who created it. So the G20, the G20 was basically supposed to respond to, it was supposed to respond to all of these crises. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, if I can just add to that, like, I think I was reading a lot of articles that were mentioning how, like, the United States is sort of pursuing this America First agenda, and by doing that, they're indirectly, or one might even say directly, isolating themselves even further and further, and almost like creating a space for China to sort of fill up as well. So I think that's another one of the
but
major.
The question now comes is, when you look at these things about powers, like the US militarily is by far the largest military in the world in terms of financing, in terms of just sheer might. It's got the most aircraft carriers,
power.
14,000 aircraft in its air force, several submarines.
I don't know how many boats are like monitoring the oceans right now as we speak.
There's places in the world that no country can go to, but the US can, right? That is a superpower. Now, the void, I don't believe the United States can go and another single country can fill it. Even if it can, I don't think that other country has the appetite to, right? So it will take a collective type of effort for things like voids to be filled. But then countries have different priorities. The European Union is focusing on Ukraine, all right? You're not going to get the same amount of funding that funding and largesse that used to be the case before. Germany, all of these countries are diverting their aid and their military resources towards more direct lethal weapons in Ukraine and Russia. China is business centric, right? If it doesn't make money, why should we? They have military interest. They have a base in Djibouti, but it's purely, it's in Djibouti for a reason, for the Red Sea, Chinese exports going to Europe, right? It's not there for, deploying to Sudan. And America has its own history. It has tried being a superpower is very hard, which is something people don't understand. Yeah. And, you can't, once you're a superpower, you're also like a dad. You have a lot of responsibilities. You have to, like what I was saying about the sea, every corner of the sea, you have to go. Russia is only patrolling, the North Atlantic, maybe some other parts. Right. But these guys are in the Antarctica, right? You have to have your flag in Antarctica. You have to have scientists who also double as military people in Antarctica. That's how a superpower operates. And it's a huge job. So it's a huge, I wouldn't underestimate the United States, but I would say that the United States role is receding voluntarily, right? As you said, all of these international forums, soft power tools, you can't bomb people into liking you. The most potent thing about the United States is its soft power. Like Coca-Cola, like, is there a place in the world you can go to without Coca-Cola?
Right.
like a bottle of Coca-Cola is the most recognizable American brand. I'm sure if you go to the Sahara Desert and you talk to some Tuareg, like some Tuareg bro,
Yeah.
and be like, "Oh, you want a Coke?" And they'd be like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." Coca-Cola and
Yeah.
Michael Jackson. I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Jackson is known all over the world. But so
Yeah.
that's my piece on the soft power thing that the United States is neglecting. But yeah, I think something that is sustainable. It's you do it. The thing with soft power is it's voluntarily submitting or voluntarily hyping or voluntarily supporting another country's power. It's a voluntary thing.
Yeah.
When you listen to American music, when you watch American basketball, all of those things you are doing it out of your own will. The fact that when you look at an Apple laptop versus a Chinese laptop, you instantly think that this Apple is probably better than that one.
Yeah.
Even if you go on that Apple laptop and type, "Oh, I hate America," I was like, "Hey, but
You're using our product, yeah.
So when you look at the successes of the G20, going back to the G20, it coordinated responses in the 2008 global financial crisis. It launched initiatives on health, digital economies, climate finance, but also supported big things that is quite relevant to Africa, considering how indebted African countries are. The Common Framework for Debt Treatment, which Zambia was the first case, actually, and it's often touted as a success story. It basically helps indebted countries restructure debt collectively. And post-COVID, the deal basically covered 6.3 billion officially, plus 3 billion private lenders' debt, which was 9.3 billion of Zambia's debt out of 23 billion, completely restructured. So it's a huge thing. And many other countries also, I think, are subject to it or are trying to be subject to it because they have also faced huge debt burdens. And then there's also the issue that was being discussed in this summit on on high interest rates, because it's Africa.
Right.
And many countries felt like it was sort of prejudiced against Africa because you're in a cycle. You have high interest rates because of the risk involved, and then you go back into debt, and then you get you get bad credit ratings from from international creditors, which is why the African Union even created the African Credit Facility. It created it earlier this year in February. But the failures have also been criticized for the non-binding nature.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so failures include obviously the non-binding nature. This is willpower. It's like whether there is momentum or not. And then there's also the lack of transparency and accountability. Like there's not much of a measurement as to how this will succeed. How to hold these people accountable if it doesn't succeed. Which is quite common in such a large group. The commitments are often watered down. Things like and you see this even in climate change summits. Where they shifted to like words like phase down and phase out, right? They sound similar, but some countries would die for the word phase down over phase out, right? Because they're like, "Oh, we'll reduce, but we won't stop. We'll reduce coal." But yeah, so that's generally the pros and cons of the G20, and also the aspect of superpower rivalry and what this means.
Yeah. So I think just briefly touching on some of the major outcomes of the 2025 G20 Summit. I think that was the declaration that we mentioned earlier, the 122-point declaration, which was adopted unusually on the first day. Then there's also the debt relief, so strengthening the G20 common framework, promoting debt transparency, as you mentioned, supporting voluntary debt for climate swaps was also discussed. And then there was also, as you also briefly touched on, the financial reforms, IMF quota realignment, increased African representation, and 100 billion in special drawing rights, which are the units for trade with the
IMF. If you want to find out what special rights are?
I was going to mention that as well. It's the we did an episode with Professor. I forget. I'm drawing a blank here.
Henrik Melber, I think.
He actually no. He recently did an article actually on he did an article regarding the G20 as well.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I hope yeah. So, anyways, you can check that out as well. It was one of our first videos as well on YouTube.
Yeah.
And of course, nowadays everything you have to sort of touch on climate and energy, commitment to triple global renewable capacity and double energy efficiency by 2030, support for just energy transitions and local mineral value chains, disaster resilience, trying to build
Mhm.
universal early warning systems by 2027,
Disaster resilience is a good thing
and new
because
recovery readiness.
yeah, no, I was just going to say
Go ahead.
disaster resilience is a good thing because of the major earthquakes that happened in Libya, in Algeria, and Morocco, and then even one in Turkey, which
Right.
has sort of a multiplier effect because, people fleeing Syria, then they go
Yeah.
to Turkey, and then more people die. So you have families where the whole family has been wiped out by ISIS and then by an earthquake. And these are massive
Wow.
earthquakes. We're talking about thousands of people dying. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think apart from the earthquakes, there's also, as a Zambian, I think drought has become like a common term. You have droughts in other places, you have floods. So
Yeah.
I think this is another big thing. But then there's also digital and innovation. So support for AI capacity building in Africa, and UNESCO tech policy efforts, social inclusion, targets for reducing youth NEET rates and narrowing gender labor gaps. Then there's global governance, calls for the UN Security Council reform and sustained African participation in global financial discussions. So these are some of the, hopefully we can try to write them down somewhere. I don't know, but these are some of the I don't know if I can call them agreements, but outcomes of the G20. But as mentioned, these are non-binding. So these are just things that I guess
It's
the G20 countries have sort of agreed on. Sorry.
It's a gigantic, yeah. I mean, you've covered it very well. It's a gigantic document. It's like 122
Mhm.
paragraphs and 30 pages. 122 paragraphs and 30 pages. So it's
Right.
vast. It's vast. So one thing that
Mhm.
I'm already looking at, this is so much. Are you going to achieve any of it? Given that America is the next G20 president,
Yeah.
right? America
Mhm.
does not endorse this in the first place. So the huge question hangs: is America actually going to, um, want to
Yeah.
implement this? And even if they did, is it even possible? But anyway, the
Right.
United States takes over 2026, and then 2027 is the UK, and then South Korea in 2028. But
Right.
another thing also I think you missed out was the corruption and illicit financial flows.
Okay.
Africa loses $80 billion annually to illicit financial flows. So there was basically launching of voluntary principles in combating illicit financial flows and supporting whistleblower protection and asset recovery. When some guy becomes president and then he decides, you know what? What's this central bank doing in my pocket? Let me buy a mansion.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So yeah, that's targeting people like
Yeah.
that.
So moving away from some of the financial things that we have really stressed out quite heavily, um, I think for many people, I'm not really on social media like maybe other people are, but I'm pretty sure everybody saw that in South Africa, people were turning their profile pictures or statuses. I'm not too, I'm starting to show my age now, but show their status, I guess you can call it, making it a purple
Profile
image,
picture.
purple
It's called
profile
a
picture,
profile picture. Yeah,
profile
yeah.
picture, right? So, so this was done because in South Africa, unfortunately, is one of the most unsafe countries to be a woman, and I think one of the statistics that people are actually putting out is that 15 on average, right? 15 women are murdered daily due to gender-based violence in
Daily.
South Africa, daily. And so there were some mass protests at the G20 where South African women and activists held mass protests, including a symbolic 15-minute lie down to represent the 15 women murdered daily due to GBV. And this actually put some pressure on President Cyril Ramaphosa, who actually declared that gender-based violence and femicide is officially a national disaster. And
Wait,
so
what's
this is
femicide? If we can explain what that is.
that's a very good question. That's a very good question. You know, I'm gonna look that up. I'm pretty sure. I think it's like it sounds like
I
a
think
homicide,
it's
but
a homicide
then
of women. It's gender-based violence that basically results in the death of a woman.
right,
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
a popularity of the last 2 years or so, last 2-3 years.
1 second, let me look that up. Actually,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, if I can
it's
just
an
add on that.
intentional.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's an intentional killing of women and girls. Well, it seems like it's murder, but where the intention is because the person is a woman.
Wow. Okay. And
Yeah,
so it's a dimension of gender-based violence at the extreme.
yeah, yeah. At the extreme level. Yeah.
Uh, uh.
Sorry, you're going to say
Yeah.
something.
No, I just wanted to. You can carry on. I just wanted to look at sort of put
Yeah.
some names to women. Some
So,
prominent names.
oh, you wanted to put okay. You can go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did some googling and searching. I mean, I know a lot of people all over platforms who have turned their profile pictures to purple, and I asked about it, and I was like, oh, okay. This is actually, it's a very well done protest because it's optimal visibility for G20. And we have heard about South Africa's gender-based violence issues for a very long time. And just put names to these faces instead of just putting numbers and saying 15. There's a lady called Olerato Mongale, was a 30-year-old woman, was killed in May 2025 after going on what she thought was a date. And then Likona Forse was a 14-year-old girl found murdered and mutilated in June 2025. And then Karabo Mokwena, 2017 murder by her boyfriend, which sparked a huge outrage called Men Are Trash moment. Yeah. I mean, you can understand why someone would think you're trash if you're abusing a woman. Any man who abuses a woman like that is trash. Then Zoliswa Nkonyana, a 19-year-old lesbian who was murdered in 2006 in a hate crime. Her killing was later legally recognized as being motivated by her sexual orientation. So you have a lot of people that are just wantonly killing people because one, they think they're weak, and one, they disagree with who they are. So these are a lot of, when you put names to these faces, you kind of wonder, like, what motivates someone to? Is it the vulnerability?
I was going to ask
like, I don't get it.
And also, I think for me, what is very confusing is because you have other countries do face this challenge, right? But it's not as potent as it is in South Africa, which is making me wonder, why is that? I mean, South Africa is one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest African country that's out there. You would expect that they would have less of these cases, right? Because typically you find that GBV is tied to poverty in some sort of a way.
At the same time, it's also the most unequal country on earth. So
true.
The most unequal country on earth. And so then you combine that with some African traditional expectations, and then men's inability to voice their frustration in peaceful, constructive, productive ways. It's a recipe for disaster. Total recipe for disaster. And the first person that you propel that on will be someone that you are cohabiting with, or someone that is vulnerable to you, which is someone that you're probably in a relationship in, because when you're in a relationship, you're vulnerable to each other. And it can be easily weaponized. And, I'm not, it's big caveat. Of course, we are both not women. So we have a limited understanding of the real
perspective. Yeah,
perspective that women have. So
definitely.
if we speak of this with a great degree of humility, but at the same time, it's also frustrating. And I do wonder what this declaration actually will do and what it means.
Well, when I was reading up about it, there's some, on official, websites, I've seen some positive, sort of reviews about the outcome of calling it a national disaster. Whereas when I look at people's statuses and things like that, it seems like people are sort of doubting whether this was going to have an impact. So I think typically people are saying that this being called a national disaster means that now, there's going to be like coordinated government responses, funding, and multi-sector intervention plans. But then the people are
in some
sort
of the groups,
from
the
my
women's
perspective,
movement,
I could be
the
wrong,
G20,
but it seems like people are sort of doubting Cyril Ramaphosa and his ability to actually act. I think that's a really good summary. I think sober summary. So I guess to wrap it up, the G20 still a very important financial meeting of the big players, the global big players. However, question mark still on whether some of these agreements that we've mentioned are actually going to be implemented, as they are non-binding. So non-binding is the word of the day. So yep, for everyone that's listening, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching this to the end. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of the episodes that we're going to be releasing. Please leave a comment if you disagree, agree, or if you want to say something. We definitely read all the comments, or at least I do. I read all the comments. What else? Am I missing anything? Please be sure to follow us on all platforms, on Instagram, TikTok, where we post the current, news and any other information regarding Africa for Dummies. And also you can also influence the channel by sending us any topics of discussion you would like to see. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening, and see you guys on the next one.